Back to today's video. In today's video, I'm making my prediction for the 2028 presidential election with Kamala Harris and JD Vance as their respective nominees for their individual parties. Before today's video, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. Only a small percentage of those of you who watch our videos are subscribed, so make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and like the video. And so let's take a look here at our electoral map. And so as you can see here, we have our electoral map going into the 2028 presidential election. As we know, Donald Trump is barred from seeking a third term unless the 22nd Amendment were to be repealed. And you have several individuals, obviously, who would be possibly vying for the Republican nomination. You see here several individuals. Now, there are several individuals who I think are most likely going to vie for the Republican nomination. I think JD Vance is highly likely to run in 2028. I think there's a possibility that Vivek Ramaswamy runs, although if he does end up winning the governorship in the state of Ohio, which he obviously has declared his candidacy for, if he does end up winning that race, it's going to be pretty difficult for him to run, obviously, since he would be coming into office in Ohio in 2027. And generally speaking, candidates would announce their candidacy in 2027, mid 2027 or so. So take that for what it will. Tim Scott, I don't know if he's going to run. We'll see, maybe. He ran in 2024, didn't really have the best campaign. You have obviously Donald Trump Jr., who's the son of Donald Trump. There's a possibility that he could run as well. I would say that there might be a possibility, although if JD Vance runs, I doubt that. I would see it would be pretty interesting to see if JD Vance and Donald Trump Jr. were to go against each other. That would be a little bit interesting, and I doubt that would happen. You obviously have Governor Brian Kemp, who's obviously a very popular governor of Georgia, beat Stacey Abrams, I believe, twice. He beat Stacey Abrams twice. Nikki Haley, there's a possibility, obviously, that she would run. She ended up winning the second most delegates to Donald Trump, obviously, and she ended up staying all the way till Super Tuesday against Donald Trump. Obviously, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, his term as governor ends in 2026, and that will be extremely important. There might be speculation that Casey DeSantis, who is his wife, is going to end up going against Byron Donalds, who is a congressman from the state of Florida. You have Ted Cruz, who obviously ran for president in 2016, ended up really, I think, coming up second place against Donald Trump, ended up winning the Iowa primary in 2016. Definitely a lot of conservatives would like it if he ended up running. Senator, you have obviously Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, who is who is the Secretary of Homeland Security under the Trump administration. I believe she was the former governor of the state of South Dakota. She was the former governor there in the state of South Dakota there. So you see that there. And you see several other individuals here. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who is the daughter, obviously, of Mike Huckabee, who obviously is a very pro-Israel, hawkish individual, a part of the Trump administration. He's the ambassador to Israel under the Trump administration. This would be her daughter. Secretary of State Marco Rubio served 2 terms. He basically was in his 3rd term as senator in the state of Florida. He actually ended up retiring from that position, and now he is obviously Secretary of State. Glenn Youngkin, who ended up winning the governorship in the state of Virginia in 2021. He was endorsed by Trump, obviously won in an extremely blue state there, especially in the general election. So you have several of those individual candidates, but I think the most likely to win the nomination, however, is JD Vance, who's the vice president of Donald Trump. A lot of people in the Republican Party would really like it if he were to run. Definitely considers himself as being a populist. Has said some more liberal things in the past with regards to corporate taxes. But definitely would be interesting if he were to run. And I think that he is going to end up running. And if he does run, I think there's a high possibility that he would win. And so you're seeing here several of the individual candidates. Now, on the Democratic side, possibly you have Governor Tim Walz. So I think if the Democrats nominate Governor Tim Walz, they have a high chance of winning the next election. Governor Tim Walz is a very popular governor. He's the governor, obviously, of the state of Minnesota. He was the vice presidential candidate, obviously, for Kamala Harris. An extremely popular individual. I think that he would definitely end up winning. I think that he definitely has done a lot of populist things in the state of Minnesota with regards to food lunches and things like that. So I definitely think that he's a very popular individual who, if he were to receive the Democratic nomination, would have a very good chance of beating any Republican. And I think that he would do a very good job there. So Tim Walz definitely is a candidate there who would be very interested in doing that. You obviously have former Secretary of Transportation under the Biden administration, Pete Buttigieg, who is considering running for the Senate in the state of Michigan in 2026, possibly. There. Governor Andrew Beshear, who obviously won a special election in the state of Kentucky there, I believe in 2023 there. He ended up winning a special election. Cory Booker, who ran for president in 2020, an extremely influential, not extremely influential individual in the Democratic Party. Some individuals compare him to Barack Obama. I don't know who this individual is, former governor there. Um, Ray Cooper. I don't think he's gonna win. Just by looking at him, I don't think he's gonna win. Okay, I mean, he's not a very well known individual. I don't think he's gonna end up winning. Senator Ruben Gallego from Arizona. I don't think if he were to run, that would be interesting. He ended up beating Kari Lake. Actually, ended up overperforming Donald Trump's margin by 7% in the state of Arizona. Would be very interesting. Uh, Former Vice President Kamala Harris from California. Obviously, she ran for president and ended up losing. I don't think she would end up winning the Democratic nomination. I think the fact that the Democrats actually, anointed her as the Democratic nominee, was not good for them in the long run, because I don't think she would have won a full fledged primary. She actually ended up losing a full fledged primary in 2020, obviously to Bernie Sanders and several other individuals. She actually didn't even make it to the Iowa caucuses back in 2020. She's not a charismatic individual by any sense of the imagination, and she is very much, not a very good politician whatsoever with Vice President Kamala Harris. Ro Khanna, I think he'd be a very interesting candidate, definitely more populist individual, more a part of the Bernie Sanders type coalition within the Democratic Party there. He is a congressman, obviously, from the state of California. Senator Amy Klobuchar, obviously, she was a part of the Donald Trump whole inauguration thing. She ran for president in 2020. She's a senator from the state of Minnesota, obviously. They're considered very moderate there. Senator Chris Murphy from the state of Connecticut. Governor Gavin Newsom, a lot of people are talking about him. He recently did an interview, not an interview, but he actually did a sit down kind of podcast thing with Charlie Kirk, who's the founder of Turning Point USA, which was responsible for a large extent of getting Donald Trump elected due to their on the ground, going on college campuses and everything. But definitely a very influential individual. He obviously, many people thought he would have run in 2024, yet he did not. He ended up debating Ron DeSantis in November of 2023, and definitely a very, very influential individual. He definitely is vying for the presidency, and he definitely does have a very bad history in the state of California that a lot of people in swing states in particular will not like. And I think it's going to be very difficult, if he were to win the nomination, for him to win. That being said, Gavin Newsom is one of the most skillful politicians in America, and he can definitely swing voters towards his side, as he revealed in the in several of his speaking events. You have AOC, obviously, who obviously beat more of an establishment Democrat in a primary race, obviously in New York, in a district in New York. They're a part of the squad, as all of you guys know. You have Senator John Ossoff from the state of Georgia, ended up beating, I believe, beating a Republican there in a runoff race there in 2020. Was responsible, obviously, for giving Democrats a good edge there in from 2020 to 2022 at least. And now he's still the senator in the state of Georgia. Former Representative Dean Phillips from the state of Minnesota, obviously, he ran for president against Joe Biden in the Democratic primary in 2024. Obviously, considered to be quite moderate. Governor J.B. Pritzker from Illinois, obviously, he's a billionaire who is a governor in the state of Illinois. A lot of people in the Democratic Party would not like that at all. Governor Josh Shapiro from the state of Pennsylvania, an extremely interesting individual. I think he would have a good chance of winning. He has a very high approval rating in the state of Pennsylvania, and I think that he does have a good chance of winning there. You have Raphael Warnock, to a certain extent, relatively solid individual in terms of that. He was able to win, obviously, in the state of Georgia, which obviously is going to be extremely important going into the 2028 election. And then you have Governor Gretchen Whitmer, obviously. She's the governor there in the state of Michigan there. All right. And then you have potential third-party candidates here. You have Dean Phillips, Mark Cuban. I don't think Mark Cuban would run. He seems more like an establishment individual. Kristen Sinema, obviously U.S. Senator from the state of Arizona, kind of considered more moderate individual there, more moderate Democrat there. So several individuals there. You can see here an opinion poll here in the Republican primary. You see here that J.D. Vance would end up beating Donald Trump Jr., Ron DeSantis, Vivek Ramaswamy, Nikki Haley, Ted Cruz, Chris Christie. J.D. Vance is in the lead. I doubt that J.D. Vance and Donald Trump Jr. would go out against each other. That would be extremely weird. But if you were to look at this, if J.D. Vance were to go and run in 2028, definitely you would have the support of Donald Trump Jr., or I suppose at least, and a lot of Donald Trump Jr.'s votes would end up going to J.D. Vance's, and that would be extremely interesting there. All right. Now that we've gone over that, let's take a look here at what Donald Trump's approval rating is. Currently, Donald Trump has a plus 1.4% approval rating. According to the majority of polls here, he does seem to be in the plus range here for his approval rating. As you can see right now, his approval rating actually did reach a high of 51.5%. It has actually gone down a little bit now, but still it isn't in the plus range here. An approval rating of 48.9% to 47.5%. I will say, however, that for example, the Rasmussen reports poll, some people would consider that as being more right leaning. Trafalgar, some people would also consider that to be more right leaning. The Economist has him tied there. Emerson has him ahead. So you can make of that what you will, but Donald Trump definitely is in the positive approval rating. Unlike his first term, however, Donald Trump's approval rating on the economy is much lower. Right now, his approval rating on the economy is an average of 45.3%, yet his disapproval rating is 49.5%. And a lot of that has to do, obviously, with the tariffs that he's trying to impose on Canada and Mexico. He's putting the tariffs on, then he's removing the tariffs, and really a lot of indecision there from Donald Trump there, and definitely not good for the economy whatsoever with the whole trade war that he's trying to ensue. And make of that what you will. But his tax cut obviously most likely going to pass. I think the tax cut, generally speaking, tax cuts are good for the economy, generally speaking, at least. So yeah, tax cuts are generally speaking good for the economy. No tax on, I believe, overtime or tips and stuff like that. That'll obviously be helpful for the economy. So yeah, I think the tax cut overall will be helpful for the economy. I think the economy will see a bump. But make of that what you will. And tariffs obviously are not good for the economy, but you can decide there for yourself. Tax cuts in general are good. I would say tax cuts in general are a good thing. That being said, when the tax cuts primarily go toward oligarchs, people who are essentially participating in an oligarchy, that is not good whatsoever, because you see a concentration of wealth and power, and generally speaking, those individuals don't invest back into the economy, which results, generally speaking, when rich people are not investing into the economy and you're giving them tax cuts, that doesn't necessarily help the economy that much, right? So you need to keep that in mind as well. All right. And so you can make of that what you will there. Now, on immigration, his approval rating is obviously higher. The amount of border crossings, obviously, in terms of what ICE has been able to capture, has gone down dramatically. And so that is very important there. And his approval rating on the immigration issue is obviously much higher here. It is obviously much higher on the issue of immigration. And I think that I think he deserves that there. I think he actually deserves a higher approval rating on immigration, because he definitely has kept his promises a lot on not entirely on immigration. He actually hasn't done enough deportations, I would say, as much as he really promised, I would say. All right, so on foreign policy, I would say that his approval rating is, generally speaking, doing not that good right now. He is behind by 6 percentage points. Obviously, doing all the crazy things with Gaza and everything is not necessarily helping his approval rating. Calling Zelensky a dictator and everything, not necessarily helping with his approval rating whatsoever. You can call Zelensky a dictator or not, and that's up to you. But what I'm saying is the majority of Americans don't agree with that whatsoever. And so on inflation, his approval rating is low. Obviously, has a 42% approval rating, 53% disapproval rating, as far as that is concerned there. And now, for those of you who are going to say that Donald Trump is going to balance the budget, he's not going to balance the budget. If you actually look at the numbers, and even individuals who are in the more conservative spectrum would also say this, I believe. Even people, for example, like Ben Shapiro or other individuals, would also say that Donald Trump is not going to end up balancing the budget over the course of his 4 years. It will be interesting if we see the fiscal report for 2020, 2025, obviously. And the worst thing that could happen to the Trump administration, I believe, is a downturn on the economy. The downturn on the economy would be extremely, extremely negative there. All right. Direction of the country in terms of that is concerned, Donald Trump, obviously, right direction, wrong direction. It is actually doing pretty good if you take a look at it right now. It's actually at a very low point in terms of where the country is headed. As you can see right now, it's only behind by 10 percentage points, which is actually an extremely low number. If you take a look at it right now, for example, if you look at 2011, look at how bad that was. And then if you take a look at where everything was headed now in 2021 in May, a lot of people said it was going on the right track, but especially in 2022 when the inflation crisis was really hitting a lot of Americans, and when inflation hit 40-year highs and everything, definitely a lot of Americans were not happy and they were saying it's going in the wrong direction. But now, as you can see here, after Donald Trump here is getting elected, you can see how these numbers begin to dwindle there in October, December or so in that election there. All right. With that being said, let's go ahead and give Donald Trump and JD Vance and Kamala Harris several of these individual states: Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, North and South Dakota, Nebraska, Nebraska's second congressional district, Nebraska's first congressional district, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, Iowa, Missouri, South Carolina, West Virginia, Utah, and the state of Alaska. We're also going to give JD Vance the state of Florida and the state of Texas. we're going to go ahead and give Kamala Harris the state of Colorado and New Mexico. We're also going to give her Vermont, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, DC, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New York, and we're also going to go ahead and give her Maine's at-large vote. J.D. Vance will end up winning Maine's 2nd congressional district, and Kamala Harris will end up winning Maine's 1st congressional district there. For that. And then Illinois will end up going for Kamala Harris. The state of Ohio will end up voting for J.D. Vance. And the state of New Hampshire would end up voting for Kamala Harris. As far as the state of Minnesota is concerned, Minnesota and Virginia would both go to Kamala Harris. The state of Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina. Fill it out, I guess. I'll go ahead and give Michigan to Kamala Harris, Wisconsin to Kamala Harris. And for Pennsylvania, I'm not entirely sure, but I'll go ahead and give it to we'll go ahead and give it to at least to Kamala Harris. All right, so we'll go ahead and give the state of Pennsylvania to Kamala Harris for now. All right, so this is my prediction as of right now. Kamala Harris at 270, J.D. Vance at 268. As far as the blue wall is concerned, I'm not entirely sure about the blue wall. I do know, however, that J.D. Vance will end up winning the states of North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. There's a high probability he's going to end up winning those states. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance took those states by really around 2 percentage points or greater. Some states even by 5 percentage points. One state in particular, but by more than 5 percentage points, such as Arizona. Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, it will be interesting. Trump down ballot effect will not exist. And so I'm going to go ahead and give those states, obviously, to Kamala Harris there. If you like this video, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and like the video, and I'll see you in the next video.